He condescendingly said to me, Scotty's little sales club is never going to work. So if you ever want to be taken seriously, if you ever want to be a VP, if you ever want to be successful, like you're going to have to, draw a much harder line or whatever. And that was 20 something years ago. And that phrase, Scotty's little sales club, still pisses me off to this day. I've used it as petty motivation to prove him wrong over and over and over. Listening to that advice felt wrong to me. And if I was going to lose, I was going to lose doing it my way.
For founders, the advice never ends, so discernment becomes a valuable skill. Think of this show as practice. I'm Lindsay Chupkema, and this is Actually I Can. Good conversations about bad advice. Let's get into it.
Name's Scott Leese. I am an entrepreneur and former 6-time sales leader. And I run a bunch of different businesses right now. I run my own sales and marketing consulting firm. I run an event business called the Surf and Sales Summit. I run a landscaping business in Southwest Austin where I live. I run a consumer product business called The Good Dog. I run 2 different venture capital firms. I host 2 different podcasts. I've got my hands in a lot of different things. So depending on what time of day you catch me and you say, what are you working on now? Could be a different thing every single time. But I spent 20 plus years in tech sales and SaaS and building startups. And my main source of income right now is my consulting business, where I work with primarily early stage companies looking to go from 0 to 25 million or so. And I help them figure out the sales and go-to-market motion and operational rigor of it all.
We talked about the bad advice you wanted to share, and you said that you had actually gotten a lot of good advice, which makes me so happy because so many of these conversations that I have, people are like, oh, I've gotten so much bad advice as a founder. So many people are just in your ear all the time telling you what to do. But you kind of narrowed it down to one thing that you wanted to share. So tell me, what's the bad advice that you received that you want to get into today?
Yes, essentially the bad advice was don't care so much about your people, about the people that you're managing and who directly report to you. This is my first ever sales leadership role. And I had hired a couple friends of mine from outside the company. They've been friends of mine. One of them had been on my college tennis team. So I'd known him for years and years. And I just became like, kind of chummy with all of my sales reps. I think I had about 15 of them, which is way too many, but that's another story. And we would do stuff together, we went out to lunch, we'd get drinks afterwards, normal stuff that, when you're younger, early sales career, like you do these kind of things together. And we did really well. And, we broke all these records and we're doing great. And I think he was a VP of sales at the time. Maybe he was a CRO. I can't remember his title, but he pulled me into his office one day and basically was like, hey, your style is not going to work. And, you're not following all these like book principles, by the book principles and, professional standards or whatnot. And he condescendingly said to me, Scotty's little sales club is never going to work. So if you ever want to be taken seriously, if you ever want to be a VP, if you ever want to be successful, like you're going to have to, draw a much harder line or whatever. And that was 20 something years ago. And that phrase, Scotty's little sales club, still pisses me off to this day. I've used it as petty motivation to prove him wrong over and over and over. In fact, for a while, I ran a sales community, coaching community, and I literally named it Scotty's little sales club out of spite.
Man.
But I just never ran my teams that way. I've always run my teams when I was a sales leader, caring about the person first more than the company, caring about the person first more than the founders, millions of dollars that they're going to make when they sell this business. I cared about the people and their lives and helping them get from point A to point B more than their number, everything. People ask me all the time about one-on-ones and pipeline meetings and all that stuff. I didn't do any of that shit. None of it. My one-on-one would be, Lindsay, let's go for a walk around the building.
Yeah.
And I just be like, how are your kids doing? How was baseball
Mhm.
last weekend? Da, 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 da. And right at the end, I'd say, is there anything I can do to help you, do better at your job? And, I've done quite well for myself. And I think if you asked enough people who worked for me why they kept following me from one job to the next and why they still reach out to me today, I would think and hope that they say, because Scott actually gave a shit about me. He
Yeah.
actually cared and didn't pay attention to that advice of, stop caring about your people so much. They're going to come and go.
Where do you think that comes from? Like, where do you think that there needs to be, there's, first of all, that there's only one way to be a sales leader, which I think is, because the advice could have been different, you could have been different, and it could have been like, hey, you need to do it this way. And two, that your way was wrong. Like, where do you think that originates?
I think that's a great question. I could try to analyze it from a
Be
psychological
like, I don't know,
perspective
it's not from me.
and say, you know what? I think that guy maybe just didn't have very many friends and
Yeah.
wasn't super emotionally intelligent
Mhm.
and didn't know how to bond with people from different backgrounds or relate to people from different backgrounds, or maybe he lacked a certain amount of empathy that I have.
Mhm.
Maybe it came from just reading too many books and being
Hmm.
over-informed and therefore rigid in your thinking. If you only read these like first principle books and all the books are from 1950 to 1980, maybe you're unaware that, you know, how you coach in 2000 to 2026 is different than how you did
Yeah.
back then. It's no
Mhm.
different than sports franchises or sports coaches. Like football coaches used to be really, really hardcore and intense and scream in your face and all that kind of thing. And, if you pay attention to the NFL or college now, like that style doesn't work as well. All those
Mhm.
coaches are out now and they have all
Yeah.
these like people called players coaches that do really well now. The coaches are
Mhm.
way younger in the NFL. You got coaches who are in their early to mid 30s now. Some of them are younger than quarterbacks playing in the NFL. So things evolve and change. Maybe that person didn't evolve with the times. I don't
Yeah.
really know.
Yeah.
But I just know that listening to that advice felt wrong to me.
Okay.
And if I was going to lose, I was going to lose doing it my way.
Where did that come from? So that, when you get advice, um, whether it's sales leader, you said it was early in your sales leadership journey.
Yeah, that was actually my
Um,
first one. Yeah.
okay, yeah, and then as a founder, like you're just inundated with advice, and you should do it this way, and you're doing it wrong, or you're doing it right. Do more of this, do less of that. You've discernment becomes super super important to know. Hey, that feels right. That feels like a challenge, or that feels wrong. Um, what is it about you, or what you value that helped you to realize, nope, that's not, that advice is not actually for me.
My family would probably tell you that it's because of how stubborn I am. And I inherited that from my father, whose nickname was American Mule because he was stubborn as a donkey. So some of it is probably stubbornness. Um, some of it is just comes from, I've been underestimated and kind of counted out my entire life. I could go all the way back to I played two sports in college, and I grew up in this small Northern California town, and nobody used to recruit north of Sacramento in California. And I was an hour and a half north of Sacramento. And so I kind of had a chip on my shoulder. So kind of always want to prove people wrong. So if you tell me one thing doesn't work, then I sort of immediately think, well, now I want to try to prove you wrong and do it that way. So some of that chip on the shoulder thing, um, some of it comes from self-confidence. And in my particular case, um, I got started in my career really late. I actually didn't start until I was 27 years old. I got really sick when I was 23 and derailed my entire life for 4 years. I was in the hospital for 4 years fighting for my life and had 9 surgeries and 4 emergency life-saving surgeries, got hooked on opioids while I was in the hospital, I had to kick off dope. So I sort of knew what it was like to have absolutely nothing and have to rebuild yourself and rebuild your life. And you have this perspective at that point in time
For
of,
sure.
well, how hard is this actually compared to what I've already been through? It's like, you think I'm afraid to miss quota? No, I care. You know, do you think
Yeah.
you can hold something over me and you gotta fire me if I don't perform? Whatever. Fucking find another job. It's like
Hmm.
things just don't matter as much when you've dealt with, name the hardest thing you've ever been through in your life, right? So I just sort of always have this anchoring belief of like, well, I've hopefully already beat the hardest thing I'll ever go through in my life. So, how hard could this actually be?
Oh, for
Um,
sure.
and so there's confidence that comes with that. And there's a belief that, man, I can figure it out. I get through with this. You that don't know who I am, you haven't been there to see the things that I've gone through. You don't know how tough or stubborn or determined I am or whatever, right? So, yeah, I'm not going to listen to you. It's probably a
Yeah.
combination of all of those things, you know?
Hmm. And how about who you surround yourself with? Because who's on your team, who you are being really friendly with, and who you're maybe to a certain extent letting your guard down with. I mean, it's not like you're like being best friends and like sharing every aspect of your life, but if you are, going to lunch and grabbing drinks and being social with someone, like that does say like, hey, I'm trusting you enough to be friendly with me, as opposed to like having this more old school hierarchy, right? Like it does, I would assume, take a certain kind of team that you bring on board too, that you can respect and trust enough to do what you need them to do that way. Maybe not.
Well,
Like how
like,
how
well,
how has building your teams looked with that approach?
well, like attracts like,
Yeah.
right? So I think that I sought out people who were also at a particular place in their life where they were ready to be vulnerable and ready to make big changes. You know, I bet over and over again for 20 years on people who everybody else sort of like tossed by the wayside. I hired, you know, somebody who was living in their car. I hired somebody who just got out of prison. I hired a single mom of 3 who was having to rebuild her life from scratch. You know, people who had been counted out a million times over, people who had substance abuse issues, people who'd been through medical issues or, spent years taking care of kids or taking care of elderly, parents and whatnot. I, I did not care about your fancy fucking Stanford degree and your, you know, perfect penmanship resume. I didn't care about that at all. In fact, people would show up to interviews and hand me the resume and I'd never look at it. And they'd say, don't you want to look at my resume? Don't you want to ask questions about my performance before? And I'd say, no, you can lie to me about all that stuff. I need to figure out who you are. Why are you here?
Hmm.
Where do you want to go? Why do you want to go there? Why now? Why are you willing to do now what you've previously been unwilling to do?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And so I would just dig into all of those things. And, you sort of talked about, or at least my interpretation of what you were saying is you got to be a little bit careful about how much you share with people or who you let in and whatnot. I don't care. I am vulnerable as hell. I'm an open book. Everybody knew everything about me. Right. And I think that is a catalyst and a tone setter for, oh, this is a safe space.
Hmm.
Oh, Scott is not perfect at all. Everybody's lives are fucked. It's just how we deal with it. That is the important thing. Right. And so I think people could relate to that, at least the people that I would go after. I wasn't hiring the guys with gel in their hair and a Patagonia vest in San Francisco. Fuck that guy. I don't want anything to do with them, you know? So yeah, I kind of was always looking for people that I could play some part in changing their life because at one point in time, somebody gave me that first opportunity. You know, I was
Yeah.
27 years old. I'd never had a job before that didn't involve getting paid to play sports or coach sports. And I remember being in the interview and this guy looked at my resume and was like, you know, why are you here? What have you ever done? Whatnot. And I told him I didn't care if he hired me. Somebody was going to hire me, and whoever took a chance on me was not going to, you know, regret it. And so he gave me my first shot.
Hmm.
So I sort of have had the approach the whole time of who else can I find that needs their, first shot and who's ready for it and who's ready to do whatever it takes to change their life right now.
Yeah.
Just kind of pay it back a little bit.
Yeah. So, how has that translated from sales leader to entrepreneur, serial entrepreneur? You said before we started recording, you just can't stop starting companies. So,
Yeah,
to
it's
your
a
life as a
problem.
founder, and then also you work with founders, right? If you're making
Yeah.
investments and you're working on growing businesses, how has that like through line helped shape how you lead as a founder, like you're leading not just a sales team but a whole business, and then as you're also leading other founders, um, what does that look
Yeah.
like? Are you looking for people that share that same state of mind, or that are perhaps doing it different ways?
As a founder myself, like I care deeply about the people who work with me and work for me. Um, at the moment, I only have one full-time employee, but she's worked with me off and on for 15 plus years. She's a dear friend of mine. The people that I bring on part-time or contracting or whatnot, like these are people that I've known for quite a while as well. Sometimes I experiment with new people, but not before. I sort of try to figure out like who they are and what they're all about and things like that. So I'm still trying to optimize for people that uh, I feel like deserve a chance and want a chance and can handle my direct approach and my openness and my, sort of challenging vulnerability and whatnot. Um, when working with founders, the first thing that comes to mind is just like how I talk to them about managing their salespeople and how they should optimize for hiring salespeople. Every founder that I talk to, the very first thing they say all the time is, I need somebody from XYZ industry who's done this exact thing before. And, immediately I'm like, pause. Jesus, do I have to have this conversation again? Let me explain to you
Apparently.
why that's not a good idea. It's over and
Hmm.
over and over and over. Um, so, you're retraining people's compass in terms of how they go about building a team, specifically a sales and go to market team.
Hmm.
So that's eye opening for founders to think of that differently. Um, I often have to explain to them that the employees are not going to get absurdly wealthy off of this business the way you are. So stop expecting and wanting them to care as much as you do, because they won't, nor should they.
Hmm.
Why
Hmm.
should I care as much as you? You're going to sell this business and make 50 million bucks. I'm going to make 500K. Why would I care as much as you? Doesn't make any logical sense.
Yeah.
So we have to treat them the right way to stay. We have to incentivize them the right way. We have to teach them. We have to have a reason to be other than mega millions. Um, in the last few years, I'd say the last 8 years, maybe that's not a few, last 8 years or so, the whole just like brand building and kind of content marketing function and founder led selling, all that stuff has become more and more important. So I've got to explain to people, well, here's how you build your brand.
Hmm.
Nobody wants to hear about your product on LinkedIn all day long. In fact, I'd argue they don't want to hear about it at all.
Yeah.
They want to hear about, how did you sell this thing? How did you build it? How did you fundraise? What did you screw up? What's going wrong right now? You're looking to fix. They want to hear stories about
Right.
you, right? They want to hear how a mom of three and two twins, by the way, started her own business and expanded to this and grew to this. How did you juggle all that? Like, that's real.
Hmm. Yeah.
People
People
want
buy from people.
real. Yeah, for now. People want real, and they want authentic,
Yeah.
right? And you could argue more and more as everything becomes more and more robotic and automated and AI that there's a revolution that's brewing where there's a certain segment of people at some point are going to want nothing to do with all that, and they're only going to want human to human authenticity, So as I teach people founder-led sales motion and brand building and content and stuff like that, um, I have to explain to them like, hey, you got to be vulnerable. You got to be this particular way. You got to write this particular way. So some of that coaching kind of comes out. That's a real direct line in terms of the coaching that I give to other founders.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, goodness. I live in that world too. And what does that look like when you are talking to, especially those who haven't been around 20 years like we have?
Some of them are barely 20 years old.
Yeah, I was gonna say that are younger, but they're not necessarily younger. It's not an age thing. We've been doing this for 20 years, and things look different now because of AI. I mean, it really is changing everything. And is it now how it's always going to be? I don't think so. But I absolutely agree that we're going to reach a saturation point, and people are going to be like, no, no more people. I want to talk to a human. I want to talk to a human. In relationships, I mean, what I'm hearing through this entire conversation with you is how much relationships matter. Humans matter. The relationships, the human connection that you build, knowing who it's for and why you're doing it, who you surround yourself with, why you surround yourself with those people, who you're serving and why. I mean, that's always been true. That's not a new thing. And that will always be true, regardless of what tech stacks we have or what AI agents we have operating in the background. And so, what advice do you have? Let's replace some of that bad advice with good advice. Like, what do you have to say to founders that are possibly getting like just constant noise about like how they're building how they're building their businesses with AI when you know how important relationships are?
It's a really difficult question because you could argue that the human first way that I'm kind of talking about is going to be less relevant, if relevant at all, moving forward. You could make that argument. I don't necessarily agree with it, but you
I
could
wouldn't.
definitely you could make the argument. I hear
Yeah.
people make the argument every week. And my kind of counter argument is right now in this moment, do you have employees that are human? Yes. Okay. Then right now, you need to treat them in a particular way. And right now, I assure you, every single one of them is full of existential dread somewhere deep inside of their soul of for how much longer am I going to be important and relevant and needed? And for how much longer will I be able to provide for my family and or myself? Ignoring that or disrespecting it or touting the demise of it is going to have a negative effect on your team. And that negative effect on your team will probably impact their performance and therefore drag you and your company down. So at least right now in the present, you still have people you better lead as if people matter still, or you're going to lose those people, and you better be ready to have agents and robots do everything or you're in big trouble. So I guess the advice is sort of like, can we just pay attention to the present moment? Can we stop talking a little bit about what it will look like when one person can just build a whole AI operating system and run a trillion-dollar company? We're not there yet, right? Can we focus on what we need to do right now still? So it's not an easy conversation, by the way,
Mm-hmm.
because
Yeah.
like I
Because
said,
it's
you can
counter to so
easily
much.
yes, you can easily make the argument, and things are moving so fast. It's like, cool story, Scott. By Saturday, you won't need any of those people.
Yeah.
It's tricky. And the other thing that I have been kind of telling founders is all of these people that are listening to you tout the demise of human employees and all this kind of stuff. They're all hearing that, and guess what? They're all building their own shit on the side probably as well.
Mm-hmm.
So they are slowly learning how to do all this stuff, maybe some of them quickly, to make you irrelevant and obsolete. Because, well, you don't think you need employees. Guess what? I don't need a fucking employer anymore either. It cuts both ways.
It does.
So be careful what you wish for, right? So, and then, on a different slant, if you're trying to sell stuff right now, it's really hard to cut through the noise. I don't care what channel you're using, phone, email, LinkedIn, whatever.
Yep.
So you have to find ways to do sort of human, non-scalable things.
Yeah.
So you could tell your team, hey, we need to build AI into our sales motion and workflows and all this kind of stuff. But especially if you're selling larger and larger deals, you still have to talk to a person right now. You still might have to shake somebody's hand. I still might have to get on a plane and fly to Indianapolis to seal the deal with you or whatever.
Right.
Right. So you can't tell your salespeople right now, don't be human. Don't learn human skills. You still have to know how to build rapport. You still have to know how to do good discovery and ask good questions. And you still need to listen and retain what you heard, right? You still need to learn how to negotiate or nudge or say, I hear you, but, and kind of overcome an objection and things like that. These are all human skills that, if you're not careful, are going to be eradicated from the workforce.
Yeah.
And until my AI is buying from your AI, those human skills are at a premium.
Yeah.
So we need to not forget that.
For sure.
Yeah.
One more thing, kind of looking at the different ways that humans are important, right? Or maybe they're not, like that kind of whole, we need each other. You said it cuts both ways, talking about like team and talked about customers. What about investments, right? Something made me think as you were talking through that there's this whole like founders need capital and investors kind of set the bar and decide what is fundable and kind of have deemed what is worthy, especially in tech for a long time. But I wonder your thoughts about founders where it's like, hey, same sentiment as what you said before. Like they're doing this thing over here on the side. They may not need capital the same way they used to. What do you think that means for investors too?
This is interesting, and I don't want to proclaim myself an expert in this. I have dove into the sort of VC world in the last 2 years or so. So it's still relatively new for me. I've made some bad ones and whiffed, and I've made some, toot my own horn, spectacular ones that have hit really well. But what I see everywhere is that whole game is changing and evolving, and people don't need access to as much capital. Simple little things like remote work killed the need for me to have and pay for, $20,000 a month office space.
Yep.
So I don't need as much money because I don't have office, right?
Mm-hmm. Especially the kind of offices that VC were funding once upon a time.
Yeah.
Especially that. I mean, that was not $20K a month. That was a lot more.
Yeah. I'm being coy. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, the number of employees we need to get stuff done. Mm-hmm. Right. I mean, I was running sales teams of 200 people 15 years ago. I couldn't even tell you the last startup that I talked to that had any ambitions of having a sales team more than about 10. Well, that's a lot less capital that's required. You don't need as many engineers now. One engineer who knows how to operate Claude code or Codex or whatever appropriately is worth way more than those 10 and costs a fraction. And then there's a lot of change in terms of the categories and the types of things being built. Like no money is going anywhere unless it's AI associated, right now. Okay, what about all the companies from the last 10 years that weren't AI that did really well? Well, they're all stuck. Nobody knows where the off ramp is. So there's been a massive lack of liquidity in the last 5 years or so. I don't know about, I have equity probably in 60, 70 companies from consulting work and operating work. They're all just sitting there. Nobody's buying them. They can't IPO, right? Okay, so the venture model needs exits.
Yeah.
In order for them to fund the new kind of batch of founders and keep the kind of ecosystem going. None of that has happened. And now you have angel investors who sort of put money into some of these funds who are holding on to their money saying, well, wait a second, I might not even get a return in 7 to 10 years the way I used to. Everything is like scary and spooky, and it's worse in the last couple of months now. So like, well, maybe I should take this money I would have dumped into VC and like put it into a HVAC business instead, right? Or a vending machine business or real estate or something. I don't know. It's anything that is less risky. So it's really interesting that there is a lot less need for capital to get started. And the expectation in order to get capital is way higher. Like you could argue that you have to be like north of $1 million ARR to even have a good shot at raising like a Series A. I didn't used to be the case.
No.
You know?
No. Yeah.
There was a world where you and I, based on what we've done and who we know, could announce, hey, lindsayscott.com, off we go. And somebody would fund us based on who we are and whatever
I was
idea
fundraising during that time. I was fundraising in the Midwest, like trying to like wave a flag over here when the coasts were getting like $10 million seed rounds based on an idea. Like those times are long gone.
That's gone. So you and I would have to, be able to say, listen, we have $1 million in ARR. We have 100 customers. This is what the metrics look like. Da, da, da. And then we have a shot. So it's a very strange ecosystem to have jumped into, I think, in general. And I've jumped in sort of at a really strange time.
Yeah. Haven't we all? So in summary, bringing it all back to the founders, perhaps the founders that are doing founder-led sales. So bringing it all together for founders that are selling and are getting all kinds of advice. What piece of good advice do you want to leave them with today?
I think you need to treat humans like humans. You need to care about them and their goals and their future. If you want them to work hard and perform well for you, got to give them a reason to stick around. And as you're going about selling, you have to be human. You have to be open. You have to be vulnerable. You have to be able to relate to other humans who, as of right now, are still the ones making buying decisions. And, those decisions are often made based on relationships and gut feel more than just cold, hard, calculated ROI. So I guess overall is, don't lose sight of what's got us here, which is the humanity involved with what we build and how we lead and inspire and how we connect with people. Let's not maybe be so quick to just chuck that out the window before we're ready.
Treat humans like humans. I think that's good advice, no matter what. So thank you so much for being here, Scott. I'm glad to know you as a human today, and appreciate you being here. All right, we'll leave it there. Thanks, Scott.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining me for Actually I Can. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube so you never miss an episode. And look for me over on Substack, where I write for founders every week and actually go a lot deeper on some of these conversations to give you more information about how it all aligns to the Brave framework and the founder's journey. Remember, discernment is a valuable skill. Think of this show as practice. Go do something brave today. Thanks for joining me on Actually I Can. We'll see you next time.